Hello there, and welcome to week 2 of the fieldwork experience. This session is mostly going to focus on lesson planning and curriculum and the use of multimedia, just as it kind of specifies in the section 3 of the textbook. And I'm going to start off with one of our primary tools for our students for our English classes, and that is the continual progress log. And this goes a lot into what our schedule looks like and how we keep track of their progress. Our students are generally on a block schedule 2 days a week. They're with us Mondays and Wednesdays, or Tuesdays and Thursdays, for anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours at a time. And so we cover a lot of ground in those classes. And as I said earlier, we move it away from the 100-point scale and into the 1 to 4-point scale, just so that we can get a better idea of where each of them sits in terms of a mastery level for each of the standards. And as you can see here, in this English 3 class, we teach to the standards specifically. Each of these we expect our students to master eventually over the course of 1 to 2 semesters. Now these aren't the only ones that we focus on. There are substandards that we do teach to, but these are the ones that we assess them on, mainly because these are the ones that pop up most in the standardized testing world. And when students have their own progress log, and so when they're going through it, they are the ones that are keeping track of their own learning, and so that's what you will see here when they're going through it. They'll highlight how well they did on some of these assessments versus others, and they're all expected to reach at least a level of 3 right here, which is proficient. We hope that eventually they'll get to a 4, which is mastery, but we don't see that a whole lot. And so throughout the course of the entire year, they'll fill up this entire document with their own highlighting of their own standards assessments. And how that relates to grading is through the Excel spreadsheets that we use to keep track of everything in terms of grading, and that's what this is. This is one of our teachers' grade book trackers, and it basically keeps an eye on how well they're doing on each of the assessments. As you can see, there's no 70s or 80s or 90s. It's all 2s, 3s, and 4s, and then half-point breakups from that. You can see here's a 4, so the student mastered this particular standard year. You see some 2s, here's a 1.5, so this tells us they're performing poorly on some of these, especially on this standard right here, LRI 3.1. So all the standards are in here for both semesters, and that's how we keep track of their grades, and this is how they keep track of their own grades. Now in terms of the lesson plans, we use this particular style here that's outlined. We switched to this style about a year and a half ago, I think, where everything's done through Excel for the most part, because it's just easier to edit and create and all that good stuff. And in terms of the standards, here's the main standard that's being covered, and the substandards I talked about earlier, these are what they are right here. So this one has a lot of listening and speaking in it, and so it's very heavy on the oral side, and it should be, since it's persuasion and speeches. And so it looks like it goes into Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream, and so it's probably on audio, and they probably have to do a speech at the end of it. I haven't really looked at this one to see if that's what it is. But anyway, so most of the lesson plans are like this. Some of them aren't as clean because we pulled them from the internet just for resource purposes and for being able to branch out from what we would normally do. But this is what our main lesson plan looks like. For the most part, we're responsible for gathering our own curriculum, our own worksheets and things like that. We have a central curriculum department that kind of gives us the raw materials for the class, like the textbooks, and this is basically how everything's stored. I think you saw some of that in the week 1 reflection, but this is we have everything on bookcases, and so this is some of the bookcases here for history and science. And this one right here is specifically for English. You can see we have some big textbooks, we have novels, I think there's an anthology and some little workbooks down here. But the way our classes are set up, we don't really use a lot of the hand-me-down resources that come from our curriculum department. Because we teach to the standard, specifically to the standards, we don't tend to use a lot of the stuff from the textbooks, so we don't get that textbook fatigue for our students, which is what our independent study side does a lot of. So we'll tend to pull as much as we can from multimedia sources like YouTube or audiobooks, or just nonfiction off of the internet as much as we can, since that's the way the Common Core is going to head. And so we have a database that we pull from that I don't have available at the moment, just filled with dozens and dozens of resources for each standard. There's PowerPoints, and that's a big thing going on. A lot of people are starting to switch to Prezi, which is something that I'm certainly enjoying, and I think my master teacher is too. So in terms of multimedia, we're definitely branching out and doing a lot more of that. I'm starting to get a little more interested in the Web 2.0 tools, and I see some blogging going on occasionally. And so that's definitely getting out there. All in all, I would say that we have a really firm grasp on what we need to do as a school and how we're progressing, and I think switching to this 4-point scale has helped quite a bit. We've seen some small jumps in our Casey scores and a little bit of a jump in our CST scores. So I think this kind of switch to the 4-point scale has helped quite a bit. Okay, I think that wraps it up for week 2. So on to week 3. Thanks a lot.